main template on page 534 is where I had directed you. It's a complicated looking statement because it's bringing together all these funds, right? So in 13.9, you're given data, and you're asked to slot that data where it goes, okay, or where it needs to go. So let's run down the list, okay? So we have, if you notice on 534, there's the upper piece that accounts for the program revenues, and then there's the lower piece that has the general revenues, okay? So anything that's a general revenue is going to go down near the bottom, down into that bottom piece, right? That bottom reconciliation piece. Does that make sense? Okay. So our general property tax revenues of $70 million goes where? General revenues, program revenues. General revenues, right? So we have our $70 million there. Proceeds from sale of general governmental land, and then there's an asterisk beside that, directing you down to the bottom. It says the cost of that land was sold was $350,000. Okay, so I'm going to put in my statements, right? I'm going to put in the difference between the two. Why?
Because I account for what the land's value was.
Okay.
And I have to...
We're trying to isolate here the accrual piece, right? We're going to accrual methods.
You're taking into account what your land is worth currently.
That's correct. I'm taking into account book value, and on land there's no depreciation, so I don't have to worry about depreciation, right? I just have to take out cost. So I sold it for $2.2 million. It cost me $350,000. So my actual gain, my actual revenue, right, is the difference. Okay? So in other classes you've probably referred to that as gain on sale of assets. Okay? That's what you're computing here. Gain on the sale of your land, of your asset. Okay? And you're just going to report the gain on this statement because it's combined. Okay? So once you combine those governmental funds and your business type funds or your proprietary funds, right, you have to account under the accrual method, not under the modified method. Okay? Let's see. Unrestricted grant revenues. General, right? General revenue. It's unrestricted. Goes to the general government. Okay? Grants restricted to education. Where do you suppose that goes?
General.
Is it general? Is it restricted?
Yes.
It's restricted to what?
To education.
To education. So it's going to be a program specific, right?
I thought on the last problem it said the same type of thing was under program or under general.
You're talking about this one?
Yeah.
So the grant that was restricted for police protection is a program revenue.
Restricted for education property taxes.
Yeah, if it's a tax,
oh, okay.
Right? That's what makes this general,
okay.
Is that it's a tax.
Okay.
So any tax is going to be general.
But if it's for a specific program.
But if it's a grant that is given for a specific program, it's going to go into a program revenue. Okay? So we have $12 million restricted to education. Capital grants for transportation is also going to be a program revenue, right? Under capital grants, not operating grants. Okay? Your chapter also makes that distinction between capital grants and operating grants. Okay? So we've accounted for those first 5 numbers. Any questions on those 5? Any questions on those 5? Okay? Next, we have expenses. Okay, your expenses are all going to go in one column on this report. As you can see on 534, we have one expense column. It's right up front. You do this a little bit backwards in my opinion, but that's how the statement's set up. That's how GAAP requires it. So they put the expenses first. So, you list all your expenses and the funds that they go with. Or the areas, the functional areas that they go with. Okay? Does that make sense? Just like it's shown on 534. General government, public safety, education, transportation, culture and recreation, and interest. Okay? So that brings us down to GLTL principal retired. What does that mean to me?
General long-term liability.
General long-term liability.
Right.
And I'm retiring or paying off some principal. Right? So, in the accrual method, when you pay off a liability, is that an expense or a revenue? Or neither? Neither, right? When you pay off a liability, what's your entry?
Credit your liability.
Debit your liability.
Credit your cash.
And credit cash.
Right.
No expense, no revenue. So, you're not going to report it on this statement. Right? You made a payment. You would have recorded it if you were using the modified accrual method because cash went out, right? You're not going to record it on this statement because even though cash went out, it's not a revenue nor is it an expense. Does that make sense? It details that a little bit more in 532. Starts talking about those pieces. Okay.
So did you make a note of that anywhere on there, or just skip it altogether?
I make a note. I skipped it because it wouldn't go on. It wouldn't go on this piece. Where would it show up? What is this statement? Activities. Where would it show up? You reduce the liability. Where would it show up? Right. Right, because that's a liability going down. It's like it's a balance sheet piece, right? Balance sheet piece. Okay. Same with general government capital outlay expenditures. Right? If I'm paying a general government capital outlay, if I'm making a general government capital outlay expenditure, I'm doing what? What do all those words mean? What am I buying?
Equipment.
I'm buying equipment. I'm buying an asset, right? Some kind of asset. Okay? If I buy an asset in the accrual method, do I have a revenue or expense? Or neither? If I buy an asset, so I go out, I'm a business, I buy a truck. Do I record that expense, revenue, or neither?
Expense.
No.
Neither.
Asset.
It goes as an asset.
Oh, yeah.
When does it come out as expense?
Depreciation.
Depreciation. Good. Okay? But when I buy it, when I make the purchase, it's an asset. So it's another balance sheet, or in this case, net position piece. Right? It's a general capital asset piece. It's not something that I'm going to put on my revenue or expense or activity statement. Right? Does that make sense? Okay? So the 16 million and the 7 million don't go on this statement that are listed on page 545. Transfer to enterprise funds. Am I going to record that? What do you think? Transfer to enterprise funds.
Should.
I'm going to because it's money going out, right? But I'm also going to record the money coming in under my business activities on the same statement, right? Because I'm combining the two. That's just an inter-fund transfer, right? Your book has used that terminology, an inter-fund transfer. So I'm moving the money from here, the general fund, to from my government funds to one of my business activity or enterprise funds. Okay? But on a net basis, it's not going anywhere, nor does it figure into my overall government, right? It's not going out, it's not coming in, it's zero.